He should not have said it, but once the words left my mouth, there was no pulling them back. I think I knew you before we met. The sentence landed between us on the small table like something fragile that might break if either of us moved too quickly. Ellie froze with her coffee halfway to her lips. Not dramatically, just a small pause, the kind you only notice when you are watching someone very closely. And I had been watching her very closely. For 3 weeks. 3 weeks of the same coffee shop. The same 2 tables by the window. The same conversations that started simple and somehow kept stretching longer every morning. 3 weeks of something that felt strangely familiar, even though I was completely sure we had never met before. Until that moment. Until the way her eyes changed when I said those words. She lowered the cup slowly. For a second she did not say anything. Then she gave a small breath of a laugh like she was trying to decide if I was joking. "That's a dangerous sentence," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was something under it now, something careful. "Why?" I asked. "Because," she said, leaning back slightly in her chair, "people usually say that right before they try to convince you fate is real." I shook my head. "This isn't about fate." She raised an eyebrow. "Oh." I hesitated, because the truth was, I did not actually know what it was about. All I knew was that for 3 weeks there had been this quiet feeling in the back of my mind, like a memory that refused to fully show itself. A feeling that every time she tilted her head slightly while listening, or tapped the green cap of her pen against her lip while thinking, or looked at me with that steady, unblinking attention, something inside me whispered, "You know this person," but I could not prove it and I could not explain it. So instead I said the only honest thing I had. "I don't know why," I admitted, "but something about you feels familiar." She studied my face for a long moment, not smiling, not speaking, just looking at me like she was measuring something. Then finally she said quietly, "Maybe that's because we've been drinking coffee together every morning for 3 weeks." That was a reasonable answer, a completely logical answer, and it should have been enough, except it was. Because the feeling had started the very first morning I heard her voice. Before we had spoken more than 2 sentences, before I even knew her name, but explaining that would have sounded strange. So instead I nodded slowly and said, "Maybe." She held my gaze 1 second longer. Then the corner of her mouth lifted into that almost smile I had been trying to earn since the first day we met. "Good," she said. "Because if you suddenly remembered we grew up together or something, that would be extremely embarrassing for both of us." The strange thing was, my chest tightened when she said that, not because the idea was ridiculous, but because some quiet part of my brain reacted like it had just heard something important, something close to the truth. I did not understand why, not yet. And if you had asked me that morning how my life was going, I would have told you it was very simple, predictable, stable. My name is Cole. I'm 32 years old. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I work as a structural engineer for a mid-sized firm downtown. Most of my job involves staring at blueprints and calculating whether things will hold or collapse. Bridges, parking structures, office buildings. It turns out I'm pretty good at figuring out whether concrete and steel will survive the weight they're asked to carry. People are harder. My life, by most standards, was steady. Same apartment for 4 years. Same commute. Same coffee shop every morning before work. I liked routines. Routines meant you knew where the edges of things were. And for the last 2 years, my mornings had followed the exact same pattern. 7:15 a.m. coffee at a place called Grounds 2 blocks from my office. Corner table, laptop open, quiet calculations before the workday started. Nothing surprising ever happened there. Until 3 weeks ago, the first time she walked in. I hadn't even noticed her right away. The shop was busy that morning, and I was halfway through a structural load calculation that wasn't behaving the way I needed it to. Numbers have personalities, some cooperate, some fight you the entire way. This one was fighting. So I was staring at the screen when someone sat at the table beside mine. I barely registered it until she started talking. She was on the phone. Her voice was calm but firm. I'm not moving the site visit, she said quietly. The meeting can move, the inspection can't. There was something about the confidence in her voice. Not loud, not aggressive, just certain, like she was used to people listening when she spoke. I looked up, and that was the moment everything shifted slightly. She was facing the window, sunlight catching strands of dark honey blonde hair that fell across her shoulder. She wasn't trying to attract attention, but the room felt different with her in it. Not louder, just rearranged, like someone had subtly adjusted the gravity. She finished the call and set her phone down. Then she turned her head slightly and caught me staring. I looked away immediately. "Sorry," I said. "That was rude." She studied me for a moment. Then she shrugged lightly. "It's fine," she said. "I'm used to it." The smallest smile touched the corner of her mouth. Not quite a full one. More like she was deciding whether I deserved the full version. I closed my laptop halfway and held out a hand. "I'm Cole." She shook it, her grip was steady. "Ellie." Her hand was warm, and again that strange feeling flickered somewhere in the back of my mind, like a word I almost remembered but couldn't quite say. We didn't talk much after that first exchange. She went back to her phone. I went back to my numbers, but when I packed up my bag 40 minutes later, she looked up again. "I hope the calculations worked out," she said. I blinked. "How did you know what I was doing?" She nodded toward my laptop. "You've been frowning at the same page for almost an hour." That surprised a laugh out of me. She gave the full smile that time, and for reasons I could not explain. I found myself looking forward to the next morning. The next morning she was there again, same window table, different coffee, a notebook open in front of her, writing with a pen that had a bright green cap. I ordered my coffee and sat at my usual spot. 10 minutes passed. Then, without looking up from the notebook, she said, "Good morning, Cole." I turned toward her. "How did you know I was here?" "Still writing," she replied. "Your laptop bag. What about it?" "It has a dent in the bottom corner." I looked down. She was right, a small crease I had never noticed before. "I'm observant," she added. That was the start, and for the next 2 weeks something strange began building between us. Morning conversations that stretched longer than planned, arguments about city infrastructure, debates about bridge design, and every once in a while, that same quiet feeling inside my chest, like I was remembering something just outside my reach, a memory that refused to fully appear, until the morning everything changed. Until the moment she casually mentioned the name of the town where she grew up, a small place outside Nashville, a place called Clarksburg. The moment she said it, something deep in my memory shifted, because Clarksburg wasn't just some town. It was the place where I had grown up too. And suddenly one strange thought kept echoing in the back of my mind. If she had grown up in Clarksburg, why did she feel so familiar? And why did the name she gave me still not feel like the right one? The moment she said the word Clarksburg, something inside my chest shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet movement, like a door in the back of my memory opening 1 inch. I tried not to react right away. "Clarksburg," I said casually, like it was just another small town name. She nodded, stirring the foam on her coffee slowly. "Yeah, tiny place outside Nashville." My fingers tightened slightly around my cup. "I grew up there," I said. She stopped stirring, only for a second, then she looked up at me. "Really?" Her voice was calm, but something behind her eyes changed. Something quick, something I almost missed. "What street?" she asked. "Maple Ridge Road," I said. For a moment she didn't move at all. The coffee shop noise continued around us. Cups clinking, espresso machines humming, people talking, but our table had gone very quiet. Then she leaned back slightly in her chair. "Well," she said slowly, "that's a coincidence." Maybe it was the word coincidence. Maybe it was the way she said it. But my brain immediately started running numbers the same way it did when something in a structural design didn't quite add up. Clarksburg wasn't big. If two kids were the same age in that town, they usually knew each other, or at least knew of each other. Yet as I looked at Ellie across the table, I couldn't match her to a single memory from that time, not one, and that should have settled the question. Except that strange familiarity was still there, stronger now, like a song playing quietly in another room. "So how long did you live there?" I asked. "Not very long," she said. Her finger tapped the green cap of her pen once against the table. "We moved when I was 8. 8, the number landed in my chest harder than it should have, because 8 was the exact age when something important in my childhood had ended, but my brain didn't connect the dots yet, not fully. "So you barely remember it then?" I said. She looked at me for a long second. Then she smiled faintly. "Oh, I remember it." The way she said that made something tighten in my stomach, but before I could ask anything else, she glanced at her phone. "I have to run," she said. "Site visit." What? She stood up, sliding the notebook into her bag. Then she paused. "You'll be here tomorrow?" she asked. "I usually am." She nodded once. "Good." And then she left, just like that. But the moment the door closed behind her, my mind started racing, because something about that conversation had felt incomplete, like she had known more than she said. That night I told Marcus about it. Marcus has been my closest friend since college. He also treats my personal life like a documentary series he's been waiting years to see finally get interesting. "So let me get this straight," he said, leaning back on my couch. "You meet a beautiful woman in a coffee shop." "Correct." "She drinks coffee with you every morning." "Yes." "She grew up in the same small town as you." "Apparently." "What? And you haven't asked her out?" I sighed. "It's not like that." Marcus stared at me. "Cole." "Yeah. It is exactly like that." I rubbed the back of my neck. "It feels different." "That's because you like her," he said. "That's not complicated." But the truth was that wasn't the complicated part. The complicated part was that strange feeling, that quiet echo of recognition that kept tapping on the inside of my memory. The next morning I arrived at grounds 5 minutes early. I told myself that didn't mean anything. It absolutely meant something. She was already there. Window table, notebook open, green pen moving across the page. She looked up when I walked in. "Morning," she said. "Morning." What? I ordered coffee and sat down across from her instead of my usual corner table. She noticed immediately. "That's new," she said. "What is?" "You abandoning your routine." I shrugged. "Structural engineers can be spontaneous." She smiled. "I'll believe that when I see it." We talked the way we always did. Work, city planning, the East Side development project our firms were both involved in. It was easy, too easy, like we had been having these conversations for years. At one point she tilted her head slightly while listening to something I was explaining about bridge load tolerances. That movement hit my brain like a flash of light. For half a second, I saw a different version of her, a smaller one standing in sunlight, hair tied back, hands on her hips. But the image disappeared before I could grab it. "You okay?" she asked. I blinked. "Yeah." "You looked like your brain just crashed." "Just thinking." "Dangerous hobby," she said. We both laughed. But the feeling stayed with me. That afternoon something else unexpected happened. My firm scheduled a planning meeting with the city's infrastructure office. When I walked into the conference room at 2 o'clock, she was sitting at the table, Ellie, laptop open, professional expression already in place. For exactly 1 second our eyes met. Then she gave me a small nod, the kind coworkers give each other, and suddenly the entire dynamic between us shifted. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. During that time we disagreed twice. Once about projected load tolerances, once about underground utility sequencing. Both times she pushed back hard, not emotionally, just intelligently. She had a way of arguing that felt clean, precise, like she wasn't trying to win, she was trying to get the right answer. I respected that immediately. After the meeting, everyone started gathering their things. She waited until the room had mostly emptied. Then she walked over. "So," she said, "we're apparently working together now." "Looks like it." She studied my face for a second. This isn't going to make coffee awkward, is it? I considered that. I hope not. She nodded. Good. Then she hesitated. Coffee. There was a small cafe around the corner from the city office. We walked there together, sat at a table near the window. And something about being outside the office environment dissolved the professional distance almost instantly. We started talking again. Not about work this time, about where we grew up, about leaving home, about the strange experience of building a life somewhere that used to feel unfamiliar. At one point she said quietly, "You know the weird thing about where you grow up?" "What?" "It stays inside you, even when you leave." That sentence landed deep. I nodded. Yeah. She looked at her coffee cup. "I don't talk about Clarksburg much," she said. "Why?" She shrugged slightly. "It feels like another lifetime." Then she added something that made my pulse jump. "I had a best friend there when I was little." My chest tightened. "Oh yeah." "Yeah," she said softly. "We were inseparable for 2 years." The room felt smaller suddenly. What happened? "My dad got a job in Seattle." She said it simply, like she had repeated the sentence many times before. "We moved in 3 weeks." Something deep inside my memory pulled harder, like a thread finally starting to come loose. "How old were you?" I asked. 8. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my mouth. 8, the same age, the same year, the same exact moment when my childhood best friend had disappeared from Maple Ridge Road. But my brain still refused to fully connect the dots, so instead I asked the question that mattered most. "What street did you live on?" She looked at me, not quickly, slowly, like she was deciding something. Then she said the words that changed everything. "Maple Ridge Road." My heart started beating harder. "We're on Maple Ridge." She held my gaze. "The yellow house." Everything inside me went completely still. The yellow house, 3 doors down from mine. The girl who had walked into my driveway when we were 6 and said she liked my bike. The girl who ran faster than me. The girl who helped me build a plywood fort in the woods and declared it our own country. The girl who cried on my front porch the day she told me she was moving away. The memory hit me all at once. Clear, sharp, unavoidable. And suddenly the woman sitting across from me wasn't just Ellie anymore. She was something else too. Someone I had loved long before I even knew what love meant. I looked at her carefully, really looked. The tilt of her head, the confidence in her voice, the steady way she held eye contact, and finally the truth broke through the fog of 20 years. My voice came out almost as a whisper. "Lucy." Her coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. She lowered it slowly, and when she looked at me, the expression on her face told me everything, because she already knew. Lucy didn't answer right away. She just looked at me, really looked, like she had been waiting for that moment and wasn't quite sure what to do now that it had finally arrived. The coffee shop noise kept moving around us, cups clinking, chairs scraping, someone laughing at the counter. But at our table, everything had gone completely still. Her fingers tightened slightly around the coffee cup. Then she set it down carefully. "You remember," she said quietly. Not a question, just a statement. My throat felt dry. "Yeah." A small breath left her chest, almost like relief. Then she leaned back in the chair and rubbed her forehead for a second. "Well," she said softly, "that took a little longer than I expected." I blinked. "You expected it?" She looked at me with one eyebrow raised. "Cole." "Yeah." "You literally told me you grew up on Maple Ridge Road." "That's not proof," I said. She tilted her head slightly. "That town had maybe 5 streets." "Still not proof." And she continued calmly, "You said your name was Cole." I froze. "Right?" She smiled a little. "Exactly." "So you knew?" I asked. She hesitated, then she nodded once. "Not at first." "When?" "Friday," she said. "Breakfast." What? My brain jumped back to that moment in the diner when we talked about Clarksburg. "When you said Maple Ridge Road," she continued, "something felt familiar." I leaned forward. "So why didn't you say anything?" She looked down at her hands for a second, then she laughed quietly. Because people change. What do you mean? She looked back at me. Cole, we were 8. Yeah, that was 24 years ago. Also true. You don't just walk up to someone you've been having coffee with for 2 weeks and say, "Hey, I think we built a plywood country together when we were kids." I couldn't help smiling at that. That would have been a weird sentence. Exactly. She pointed a finger at me. And if I had been wrong, it would have been one of the most embarrassing moments of my adult life. I leaned back in the chair. So you just waited? She nodded, pretty much. For how long? She lifted one shoulder. Until you figured it out. That seems risky. She smiled slightly. You figured it out. I couldn't argue with that. For a moment we just sat there, both of us looking at each other in a completely different way than we had 30 minutes earlier, because suddenly the stranger across the table wasn't a stranger anymore. She was the girl from the yellow house, the girl who had raced me to the stop sign every afternoon for 2 summers. The girl who had declared our plywood fort an independent country and insisted we create a 45-second handshake to celebrate it. The girl who cried on my front porch the day she said she was moving away. And somehow, she had walked back into my life through a coffee shop door. You really didn't recognize me? She asked. I shook my head slowly. Not until just now. Well, sorry. She laughed. No, it's fair. She tapped the green cap of her pen against the table. I look a little different than I did at 8. A little. Only a little, she teased. Okay, a lot. We both laughed, then something occurred to me. Wait, I said. What? You don't even go by Lucy anymore. She nodded. Not since middle school. So where did Ellie come from? What? She leaned back slightly. Full name is Eleanor Lucy Hartwell. I blinked. I didn't know that. You never asked. That's because we were 8. She shrugged. Fair point. Why Ellie? Teacher in Seattle called me that on the first day of school, she said. I was the new kid, new city, new everything. And it stuck. Yeah. She looked at me thoughtfully. And honestly, I kind of liked the idea of being a different version of myself. I nodded slowly. That made sense. New places often came with new identities. Lucy still fits, I said. She looked at me for a second, then a soft smile appeared. No one has called me that in a very long time. Something warm moved through my chest when she said that. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said something that surprised me. Do you still remember the handshake? My brain immediately jumped back 24 years. The ridiculous, overly complicated sequence we had invented. Claps, snaps, spins, 12 steps in total. I laughed. Maybe. Her eyes widened slightly. Maybe. It's been 2 decades. There were 12 steps. You remember the number. I remember all of them. I studied her face. You're serious. Completely. Right now. She glanced around the coffee shop, people working on laptops, students studying, baristas steaming milk. Then she shook her head quickly. No. Why not? Because we are 2 32-year-old professionals sitting in a public coffee shop. That seems like a weak excuse. It's a perfectly reasonable excuse. I grinned. She rolled her eyes, but I noticed something. Her expression had softened. The guarded edges I had seen when we first met were gone, replaced by something warmer, familiar. So, she said after a moment, what happened to you after we moved? I leaned back in my chair, honestly. Yeah. I thought about you for a long time. She looked surprised. Really? Yeah. We wrote letters for a while. About a year. Then she nodded. I remember that. I still remember the day they stopped. She looked down at the table quietly. Life happened. Yeah. We sat with that truth for a moment. There's a strange kind of sadness that comes with childhood friendships. When you're young, you don't realize you're saying goodbye for the last time. You just assume tomorrow will look the same. But sometimes tomorrow moves to another state, and the friendship becomes a memory before you understand it's happening. She spoke again after a moment. I wondered about you sometimes. I looked up. Yeah. Yeah. What did you wonder? If you were still building things. I smiled slightly. That checks out. You were always building something, she said. Bike ramps, tree forts, that ridiculous rope bridge you tried to make in the woods. That bridge would have worked. It collapsed immediately. That's because you jumped on it. I was testing structural integrity by swinging from it like a monkey. She laughed. And for about 10 seconds. We were 8 years old again. Not engineers, not planners, just two kids sitting on a wooden fort floor arguing about physics. Then the moment passed. We were back in the present, two adults in a Nashville coffee shop, but something had changed between us. Not dramatically, just quietly. Like a structure settling onto a foundation you didn't realize was still there. After a moment she looked at me thoughtfully. You know something weird. What? When I moved to Nashville 4 months ago, it felt like coming home. That's not weird. It is, she said, because I hadn't been back since I was 8. I watched her for a second. Maybe part of you remembered something. She gave a small smile. Maybe. Then she finished her coffee. We stayed there for another hour, talking about Seattle, Chicago, college, careers, the lives we had built in the 24 years between Maple Ridge Road and that coffee shop. When we finally stood up to leave, the afternoon sun was starting to dip through the windows. We walked outside together. On the sidewalk she paused. You know what we should do sometime? She said. What? Go back. To where? She looked directly at me. Clarksburg. The word landed quietly between us. I thought about Maple Ridge Road, the stop sign, the woods behind the houses, the yellow house 3 doors down, and suddenly the idea felt less like nostalgia and more like unfinished business. Yeah, I said, I think we should. She smiled, and somehow that smile felt different now. Like the past and present had finally recognized each other. For the next few days, everything felt slightly unreal, not in a dramatic way. Nothing about our routines actually changed. We still met at grounds almost every morning, still sat near the window, still argued about city infrastructure like two people whose jobs depended on it. But something underneath those conversations had shifted. Before, Ellie had been a stranger who felt oddly familiar. Now she was Lucy. The girl from the yellow house. The girl who had once beaten me in every bike race on Maple Ridge Road. And every time she laughed now, I heard an echo of that same laugh from 24 years ago. It made everything feel both new and strangely old at the same time. On Tuesday morning she arrived before I did. That almost never happened. She was already sitting at the table by the window when I walked in. 2 coffees were waiting. She slid one across the table as I sat down. Careful, she said. It's hot. I looked at the cup. You ordered this for me. She shrugged casually. You always get the same thing. That doesn't mean you memorized it. She raised one eyebrow. I'm observant. I took a sip. She had ordered it exactly right. Cream, no sugar. I looked at her over the rim of the cup. That's slightly impressive. She smiled faintly. I try. For a moment we sat quietly. Then she said something that caught me off guard. I drove past Maple Ridge Road once. I lowered the cup. When? A few years ago, she said. I was in Tennessee for a conference and I rented a car. And I told myself I just wanted to see the town. Her finger traced the edge of her coffee lid slowly. But when I got there, I didn't stop. Why not? She shrugged. I guess I wasn't ready. I watched her carefully. What about now? She looked up. Her eyes held mine for a long moment. Now might be different. Later that afternoon, I told Marcus everything. He listened in complete silence, which for Marcus was almost suspicious. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. "That's insane," he said finally. "Why?" "You met your childhood best friend again by accident in a coffee shop." "Yeah. After 24 years. "Correct. And you're both working on the same infrastructure project." "That part surprised me too." "What?" Marcus shook his head slowly. "Cole." "What?" "That's not coincidence." "What is it then?" He pointed at me. "That's the universe fixing something it broke." I laughed. "You've been watching too many romantic movies." "Maybe," he admitted. "But if a story like that happened in a movie, you'd say it was unrealistic." He wasn't wrong about that. 2 days later, something else unexpected happened. Ellie texted me. It was early Saturday morning. The message was short. "Are you busy today?" I typed back, "Not particularly, why?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, another message came. "I'm driving to Clarksburg." My chest tightened slightly. "Today?" "Yeah." A few seconds passed, then another message appeared. "Do you want to come with me?" I stared at the phone for a moment. Clarksburg, Maple Ridge Road, the yellow house, places I hadn't visited in years, places that suddenly meant something different now. I typed one word. "Yes." We left Nashville about an hour later. The sky was gray, October clouds hanging low over the highway. Ellie drove. She had created a playlist for the drive. "Road trip rules," she explained. "Driver controls the music." That seems fair. The songs were soft, mostly acoustic, the kind of music that makes long drives feel thoughtful instead of quiet. We talked a little during the drive, about work, about Nashville, about everything except the reason we were actually going. But the closer we got to Clarksburg, the quieter the car became. By the time we turned onto the road leading into town, neither of us was talking. Clarksburg looked smaller than I remembered. Childhood places always do. The streets felt narrower. The houses seemed closer together, but the shapes of everything were the same. The stop sign at the end of Maple Ridge Road, the old oak trees lining the sidewalks, and when Ellie turned onto Maple Ridge itself, something deep in my chest shifted. The street hadn't changed much. A few new fences, some fresh paint on the houses, but it was still unmistakably the same place. Ellie slowed the car. "3 doors down," she said quietly. I nodded. "I remember." She pulled the car to the curb. We stepped out. The air was cool. Leaves scattered across the sidewalk, and there it was, the yellow house, still yellow. Maybe a slightly different shade than 24 years ago, but close enough that my brain instantly recognized it. Ellie stood on the sidewalk staring at it, not moving. I stood beside her. For a long moment neither of us said anything. Finally she spoke. "It looks smaller." "Everything does," I said. She nodded slowly. "I used to see your house from my bedroom window." I glanced down the street toward my old home. The white house with the blue shutters, still there, still exactly where it had always been. Ellie crossed her arms lightly. "The morning we left," she said softly, "I stood at that window." I looked at her. She was still staring at the yellow house. "I thought about running over to your door one more time." My chest tightened, but she gave a small sad smile. "We ran out of time." The street was completely quiet. No cars, no people, just wind moving through the trees. I said something before I could overthink it. "You could knock now." She turned to look at me, and in that moment I saw every version of her at once. Ellie, Lucy, the confident urban planner, the 8-year-old girl who raced bikes and built forts in the woods. Then she reached over and took my hand. Her fingers were warm. We stood there like that for a while, 2 adults standing on a quiet street that had once been the entire world. 24 years folded underneath the moment like a foundation you couldn't see. Finally she exhaled slowly. "I'm glad you liked my bike," she said. I blinked. "You mean when you liked mine?" She shook her head with a playful smile. "I let you win that race." "That is absolutely not true." Completely true. You destroyed me. Exactly, she said. That's why I let you win. I laughed, she laughed too. And suddenly the years between then and now felt a lot shorter. Not gone, just connected, like the story had never actually ended, it had only paused. When we finally left Maple Ridge Road, neither of us rushed back to the car. It felt strange walking away from that street, like we were stepping out of a photograph we had somehow managed to climb back into. Ellie opened the passenger door and paused before getting in. She looked down the road one more time. The yellow house. The stop sign at the end of the block, the trees that had grown tall enough to hide half the sky. Funny, she said quietly. What? When I was a kid, this place felt enormous. Yeah, I said, same. Now it looks like 3 minutes of walking. That's childhood for you. She nodded slowly and got into the car. The drive back to Nashville was quieter than the one that brought us here. Not uncomfortable quiet, just thoughtful. The kind of silence that happens when two people are both replaying memories at the same time. The playlist Ellie had made for the drive had moved into slower songs now. The road stretched ahead of us in long gray lines. At one point she lowered the volume slightly. You know something, she said. What? I used to wonder about you. I turned my head slightly. Yeah. Yeah. What did you wonder? She kept her eyes on the road. I wondered if you still built things. What? I smiled. That checks out. You were always building something, she said. Bike ramps, tree forts, that rope bridge you tried to hang between two trees. That bridge would have worked. It collapsed in about 8 seconds. You jumped on it. I was testing it. By swinging from it like a monkey. She laughed, the same laugh, not identical to the one from when we were 8, but close enough that my chest felt warm hearing it. After a moment she asked something else. Did you ever think about me? The question was quiet, honest, I didn't hesitate. Yeah. How often? I thought about that, more than I probably realized. She glanced over briefly. Really? Yeah. Why? I shrugged slightly. You were my best friend. She nodded slowly. Then she said something I hadn't expected. There's a weird kind of grief that comes with childhood friendships. I looked at her. What do you mean? When you're a kid, she said, you don't realize something important is ending. I nodded. You just move away. And life keeps going, she continued. Then one day you look back and realize you never actually said goodbye. The highway stretched ahead of us, city lights beginning to glow faintly in the distance. I understood exactly what she meant. For years Lucy had existed in my memory like a photograph, something important, something unfinished. And now she was sitting in the driver's seat next to me, talking about playlists and coffee orders and bridge designs. It felt surreal, but also strangely correct. Like a missing piece had quietly slid back into place. You know what Marcus said about all this? I told her. Who's Marcus again? My best friend. The guy who's been waiting for you to finally have a life. Exactly that one. What did he say? He said this wasn't coincidence. She raised an eyebrow. Oh. He said it was the universe fixing something it broke. She smiled slightly. That's very dramatic. He's a dramatic person. She laughed, but after a moment she grew quiet again. Maybe he's not completely wrong, though. What do you mean? She glanced at me. For years I kept thinking about that little town. Clarksburg. Yeah. Why? I didn't know. She tapped her fingers lightly on the steering wheel. I just knew something important had happened there. I looked out the window for a moment, trees passing in dark shapes. Then I said something that had been forming in my head all day. You know what I realized today? What? I've spent most of my adult life trying to build a stable structure. She smiled slightly. That sounds very on brand for you. Structural engineers think like that. Fair. But every relationship I started, I continued, felt like something was missing. She didn't interrupt, just listened, like there was a load-bearing wall that wasn't there. She laughed softly. That might be the most engineering metaphor anyone has ever used to describe their love life. Probably, but it's true. I looked at her, and today I realized something. What? The missing wall might have been 3 doors down the whole time. She didn't say anything for a few seconds. The car continued down the highway, music playing softly. Finally, she spoke. That's a very dangerous thing to say. Why? Because it sounds like destiny again. I smiled. I told you this wasn't about destiny. Then what is it about? I thought about that carefully, then I answered honestly, second chances. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she turned her eyes back to the road, but I saw the small smile that appeared. When we reached Nashville, the city lights were bright against the night sky. Ellie parked near my apartment building and turned off the engine. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she said quietly, "You know something funny." What? I still remember the handshake. I laughed. You're really committed to that. 12 steps, she said. You keep mentioning that number. Because you're about to forget one of them. I am not. She opened the car door. Come on. We stood on the sidewalk under the streetlights, cars passing occasionally, cool night air. Ready? She asked. This feels ridiculous. You're stalling. I'm preparing. She held out her hand, and just like that, 24 years disappeared. Clap, snap, spin. We missed 2 steps and had to start over once because we both started laughing, but by the 3rd attempt, we got all 12. When it ended, we were both standing there smiling like idiots. She shook her head. I can't believe we remembered that. What? Muscle memory, I said. No, she replied softly. Some things just don't disappear. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she stepped a little closer, not dramatic, just enough that the space between us changed. You know what the strange part is? She said. What? I think part of me always hoped I'd see you again. My chest tightened slightly. I think part of me did too. She smiled, the full version, the one that had taken me 2 weeks to earn in that coffee shop. Then she squeezed my hand gently and stepped back. I'll see you at grounds tomorrow, she said. 7:15. Of course. She got back in the car and drove away. I stood on the sidewalk watching the taillights disappear down the street, thinking about Maple Ridge Road, thinking about the yellow house, thinking about the girl who once walked up my driveway and told me she liked my bike. It turns out some friendships don't disappear. They just wait quietly until the right morning at the right coffee shop, and sometimes, when you least expect it, they come back.